The theater was quiet long before the lights came up. It was the kind of quiet that felt wide and deep, like a held breath. Rows of red seats curved gently toward the stage, and above them, the ceiling lights glowed softly like distant stars. Crew members moved carefully, their footsteps muted. Cameras waited on their tracks. In the audience, people sat with hands folded or resting on their laps, some whispering, some staring ahead. There was no rush in the air. It felt like the night was asking everyone to slow down. On the stage, a single microphone stood alone, centered beneath a calm blue wash of light. Behind it, a simple backdrop showed no movement, no flashing shapes, no distractions. It was not yet a moment of surprise. It was a moment of stillness, the kind that comes just before something honest happens. From the side of the stage, a young man waited. He wore a simple black clerical shirt with a white collar, neat and plain. His hands were relaxed at his sides, though his fingers trembled just a little. He closed his eyes and took one slow breath, then another. He was only 22 years old, a Filipino priest far from home, standing on a stage known for noise and spectacle. Tonight, he was not here to impress. He was here to offer something gentle. His name was Father Miguel. He grew up in a small coastal town in the Philippines, where mornings smelled of salt and warm bread, and evenings were filled with song drifting from open windows. Music had always lived near him, like a friend who never asked for attention but was always ready to listen. When he was a child, he sang in church not because he was asked, but because it felt natural, like prayer with breath. As he grew older, life became heavier. His father passed away suddenly when Miguel was 16, leaving behind silence that no song seemed to reach. His mother worked longer hours, his younger siblings learned to be quiet, and Miguel learned how to be strong by being still. In that stillness, he felt a calling, slow and patient, guiding him toward the priesthood. Yet even as he wore his collar and learned his vows, doubt followed him. Was he too young? Too soft? Did his voice belong in a church, or could it belong somewhere else too? When a friend suggested he audition for America's Got Talent, Miguel laughed at first. The idea felt too large, too loud. But the thought stayed with him, resting gently in his heart, waiting. The problem was not fear of the stage. It was fear of being misunderstood. Miguel worried that people would see the collar before they heard the voice. He worried they would expect something perfect or holy, something distant. What he wanted to offer was simpler than that. He wanted to sing like he prayed, with honesty, with space for pain, with room for hope. Backstage, as his name was called, his heart beat faster, not from excitement but from responsibility. He thought of his mother watching from home, her hands clasped, her eyes closed. He thought of his parish, of the old women who sang softly off-key, of the children who laughed during hymns. He stepped onto the stage with measured steps, feeling the warmth of the lights on his face. The audience applauded politely, curious but reserved. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, studying him. Howie Mandel smiled with interest. Heidi Klum tilted her head. Sofia Vergara watched quietly. Miguel introduced himself in a calm voice, explaining who he was and why he was there. There was no speech prepared, only truth. He said he wanted to remind people that faith could be gentle, and that music could hold grief without breaking. The room listened. Something in the air shifted, subtle but real. When the music began, it was barely there at all, just a soft piano note, slow and steady. Miguel closed his eyes. He did not look at the judges or the cameras. He sang as if he were alone in a quiet chapel, his voice low and warm, carrying the weight of lived experience. Each word came with care, leaving space between lines, allowing the sound to fade before the next breath. The song spoke of loss and waiting, of love that does not leave even when people do. His voice was not loud, but it filled the room. It moved gently, like water finding its way around stones. In the audience, people leaned forward without realizing it. Some wiped their eyes. Others simply listened, their faces softening. The judges stopped taking notes. Simon's expression changed first, his usual sharp focus easing into something more human. The song did not ask for applause. It asked for presence. Miguel's hands remained still, his posture relaxed. There was no performance, only sharing. As the final note hung in the air, it seemed to linger longer than expected, as if the room itself was holding onto it. The gentle twist came not from the judges, but from Miguel himself. Instead of ending the song where it usually ended, he added a quiet verse, one he had written alone. He sang about doubt, about standing at crossroads, about loving a world that often feels too loud. He sang about choosing kindness again and again, even when it feels small. The words were simple, almost fragile, but they carried a deep truth. This was not a priest singing to a crowd. This was a young man offering his heart without protection. The audience felt it. A soft sob echoed from somewhere in the dark. Heidi pressed her hand to her chest. Sophia blinked back tears. When the song finally ended, there was silence. Not awkward silence, but full silence, the kind that feels earned. Then, slowly, the applause began. It grew not into cheers, but into something steady and respectful. People stood, one by one, not because they were told to, but because it felt right. Simon spoke last. His voice was quieter than usual. He said that he had heard many singers, but few who understood the power of restraint. He said that Miguel did not perform at them, but with them. Howie nodded, calling the moment pure. Heidi said she felt like she had been invited into something sacred. Sophia smiled through tears and thanked Miguel for reminding her of home and family. Miguel listened with his head slightly bowed, hands folded, receiving their words without pride. When Simon reached for the golden buzzer, there was no dramatic pause. He pressed it gently, as if not to break the feeling. Golden light fell like warm rain. Confetti drifted slowly, not rushed, not loud. Miguel looked up, surprised, then smiled, a small, grateful smile. He whispered a quiet thank you, not just to the judges, but to the moment itself. After the show, in the quiet hallway behind the stage, Miguel stood alone for a moment. The noise of celebration faded behind closed doors. He touched the collar at his neck and breathed. He did not feel changed, not in a sudden way. He felt confirmed. The doubts did not vanish, but they softened. He understood that his voice could belong in many places, that faith and art did not have to compete. They could walk together, slowly. He thought again of his father, of his mother, of the small church by the sea. He imagined returning home, standing at the altar, singing with the same honesty. The world outside was still loud, still uncertain, but for now, there was peace. On that stage, a young Filipino priest had reminded millions that sometimes the quietest songs are the ones that stay with us the longest, echoing gently, long after the lights go down.